Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents Napoleon Hill, My Mentor, Timeless Principles to Take Your Success to the Next Level by Don Green, narrated by Don Green and Dan Strutzel.
Hi, I am Dan Strutzel, president of Inspire Productions, and I'm honored to be the host of a very special extended interview with a very special human being. But before I introduce you to him, I want to briefly describe two different unique individuals. The first, Oliver Napoleon Hill, most people know him as simply Napoleon Hill, was born on October 26, 1883, in an Appalachian town called Pound, Virginia, and died November 8, 1970. In those 87 years, his accomplishments were legendary. He is probably best known for his world-renowned bestseller, Think and Grow Rich, which is among the 10 top-selling self-help books of all time. The book contained many of the success secrets he learned as a result of a commission he received from the steel magnate Andrew Carnegie to write the world's first philosophy of success. Napoleon Hill quickly became a publishing powerhouse, publishing more than 10 best-selling books, numerous magazine articles, and courses. The second individual, Mr. Don Green, was also born in an Appalachian town of Wise, Virginia, the son of a coal miner. From a young age, Don had an entrepreneurial streak. His first youthful business venture at age 15 was charging admission to see his pet bear. Yes, the living and growing kind. After a series of successes in business in his early career, he went on to become a bank CEO at the young age of just 41 years old. The savings and loan then was on the verge of being closed by federal banking authorities and had lost capital of $1.5 million in the previous 3 years. For the next 18 years, while Don was the CEO, the savings and loan, which was converted to a savings bank, was profitable every single year. After the bank was sold and Don approached the age of 60, he was asked by the trustees of the Napoleon Hill Foundation to become executive director and manage the foundation's affairs on a daily basis. Since Don's background was in banking, he had little knowledge of book publishing. But his years in banking and as owner of several businesses in various diverse fields, from real estate development to dry cleaning, his love for books and learning, and in particular, his partiality to the works of Napoleon Hill, since they had endured for close to a century, led him to take the work of Napoleon Hill Foundation to a new level of success, expanding the foundation's reach, using his financial skills to grow the foundation's funds, expanding the foundation's outreach to prisons, and greatly expanding the foundation's reach internationally. You might say, Don Green, now CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation to this day, succeeded by applying the very principles that his mentor, Napoleon Hill, discussed in his many publications. In this in-depth interview, you'll develop a deeper understanding of both of these outstanding individuals. It is my pleasure to be joined by Don Green himself, a longtime friend and business partner of mine, and one of the foremost experts I know on all aspects of success, both professional and personal. And through my discussion with Don, as you gain a deeper understanding of him and his life story, you'll also gain a much deeper perspective on that of Oliver Napoleon Hill. Not only will Don discuss the many principles of success that made Napoleon Hill famous, but he'll also share some of his knowledge of Napoleon Hill, the man, behind the scenes, as well as stories and insights about him that haven't been shared publicly before. Best of all, Don Green will convince you that the principles behind Napoleon Hill's classics, like Think and Grow Rich, written more than 80 years ago, are more vital and relevant than ever before. And he'll teach you the principles by outlining those that have been most impactful to him, and give you practical ways to put the power of Napoleon Hill to work for you. You'll learn the tools needed to uncover the secrets of growth, creativity, power, and achievement inside all of us. These are essential ideas for any business professional seeking the knowledge and inspiration necessary to discard fear and attain the goals of personal and professional triumph. So if you're ready to apply Hill's time-tested tools for success and make your dreams a reality using the original principles of personal achievement, then keep listening. You're about to hear about how these two individuals, who started out with few financial resources, both born in rural Appalachian towns, went on to live the American dream. And if they can do it, you most certainly can go on to live your dreams as well. So let's get started. It's my pleasure to welcome my friend, Mr. Don Green. And Don, it's great to be with you today.
Same here, Dan. I have a passion for what I do. I've tried to not concentrate on myself so much because it's about Napoleon Hill, but I absolutely have a passion to what I do from a day-to-day basis and the results that we obtain through the lives of others. I hear so many people firsthand knowledge of the effect, some famous people, some not so famous, some local, some business partners, and especially enjoy the young people from a college. I originated a course I call Keys to Success. I did not want to use Think and Grow Rich. I'd make people think the course was just about money, but that there were 17 principles that we could talk about and they could learn from and they could apply them in their daily life. I started that in the 90s, and I taught it 12 times. My secretary would get the check where they paid me, it'd come to the mail. She'd bring it to me. I signed the back of it and sent it back. I had to accept money to keep them getting in trouble with the college. They paid me for teaching it, but they couldn't keep me from returning the money. But the stories of those young people is absolutely, I could go on and on about them. The success stories that they've had is just numerous. You could fill books on them. And the people that took it, first class was a night class. And I had a lady in there who was a CPA, had aspired to be an attorney. She's a corporate attorney today. And I won't say too awful much about her, but she put it on her paper. Her goal was to become a attorney. She was already a CPA, but she wanted to be an attorney doing legal work for corporations. Of course, she already knew the tax structures. And so I saw her recently, and she said, "Oh, Don, I've been wanting to run into you." Said, I was looking at my paper the other day, and when I was in your class that night, I said my goal was to become a corporate attorney. And you wrote at the bottom of it, "Don't tell me, go out and do it." She couldn't wait to tell me, but the stories of the young people and what they've amounted to, and then some of us elderly people, like best friends, attorney was in my class, I had a pharmacist in my class, I had a physician, medical doctor in my class, but it was people that knew me. They had heard me speak at the chamber or some event or just known me personally in the banking business, and was a great class. It was meant for business students, but the word got out. And the second time I taught it, the college prided itself on small classes. They say 15 or so they get individual attention. They called me at work and said, "Mr. Green, these 52 people signed up for your class. We don't like big classes like that." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter how many people I talk to." I said, "Make a little bit more time on the paperwork. One night's all I can give." And so they left me alone, but it was a very, very popular class, and it still is today. And it's a required course for the students who are, we call Napoleon Hill scholars. We foot the expenses for somewhere in the 20-some, so we keep adding to it. We've also, in honor of Dr. Hill, we created a professorship that they use to attract, I would call it more higher caliber professional educators that's got experiences. Salary level doesn't attract them without some bonus, something added to it. So that's been very beneficial too. And I guess I don't even know how many years it's been in effect, but we keep doing good and we keep adding money to them. And that's what we get up loving doing. But I love the stories from those young people that went out in the world, made it where they become an accountant or become a CPA or become a business owner. But to see them be inspired, and once they get that inspiration, there's almost nothing could hold them back. I guess it's saying, how bad do you want it? And they want it real bad. It's no reflection on their parents. Most of our parents did the best they could with what they had. Then them to be able to have opportunity and make the most of it is it's very rewarding, because I'm sitting there at my desk realizing that when one of those students It's the first generation to go to college, just like mine, Burns. I knew that when I went to college and graduated, when my daughter come along, she would be going to college. The only question was which one. And then when the grandson was born, it's the first thing I done. I bought him 4-year college education. And because it becomes just an assumption, we assume our descendants are going to follow in our path. And they got a little better start, but it's once the cycle is broken, and personally, I think that's the way we cure poverty. So many people born in poverty, they just accept it. For instance, as I was waiting on a man one day, and I just made a remark to him because I knew his son was going to school with my daughter. And I won't tell you all the words he said, but I just making conversation. I said, "Where's your son going to college?" And he said some choice words and said, "He's not going nowhere. It's too expensive." And it was real easy for me to come back at him and say, "It's not near as expensive as ignorance." So many times the kids just need a little encouragement. They grow up in a home. Some of the people say that they've heard no 250,000 times time they get prepared for life, and they don't realize their potential. Dan, we learn 2 ways. We learn from our association with people, and we learn from books. If we don't listen to someone else, we don't stand a very good chance of getting ahead in life. And when we accept those things, that we can change our fate, so to call, by reading and association with other people, because it kind of rubs off on you, to think that you can read something that someone's successful. And I read so many books, and sometimes you only pick up one idea, something that you want to jot down, or read a book and they refer to another book. You make a note of that, and you order that book to see what they learned from it. Education is a lifelong process. I've told the students 1,000 times, just think of an education as a bridge. It's a bridge to take you from where you are to where you want to go. And it's just that simple. But you have to have some means to get there. If you accept what you was dealt with, that you was born in poverty and your parents is in poverty, and that's all they ever knew was poverty, you just accept your fate. But somewhere along the line, we notice most people start making excuses. My parents didn't send me to right school. Taxes are too high. There's no opportunities. I published a little book called Your Greatest Power, The Power of Choice, by a psychologist that Mr. Stone, our chairman, worked with. And it's sold more than 1 million copies. It's only 96 pages. But it explains in a short message the power we have to choose. Dan, you and I got up this morning, we decided to do this. We could have went out hunting with some drugs or stayed home and didn't watch soap operas or what's on today. But we have that ability to make that choice. The choices we make, they become habits. Then the habits define who we are, good or bad. Our mind will accept either one of them. They'll accept positive information. They'll accept negative information. They can't tell the difference in them. But the one we dwell on the most, that's the one we're most likely to become. It's just that simple.
You're certainly a living example of all the ideas you've just shared. And some of these ideas are just a flavor of what we're going to be covering in this program, that people have an idea that the choice really is up to you. And it's about the ideas and the thoughts that you carry in your mind most of the time that reflect the person you're going to become. It's interesting, Don, as we begin the program, one of the things I know about you, have known a long time, is that you're always a very humble person and have always done your best as the CEO of Napoleon Hill Foundation to keep Napoleon Hill the center of everything. And like you say, not make it about you. Your story is so powerful. And I see so many parallels, as I said in the introduction, between your story and Napoleon Hill's story in many ways, that I think bringing you out from behind the veil a little bit here in this program, in this audiobook and book, that this can really be an inspiration for other people that, again, like you said, are making one excuse after another, and in fact, maybe have many greater advantages than you ever had starting to grow up. I call this first chapter Coal Miner's Son, the Don Green story, because your story reminded me of a movie that was one of my favorites, and I actually just rewatched it recently, called Coal Miner's Daughter, all about the singer Loretta Lynn and her story growing up with a coal miner father and the kind of struggles within her family to kind of break away from the preordained role that she was going to live out in her life to actually become a well-known singer and going to live her dreams, if you will. So I call this coal miner's son because I think that there's a lot of parallels in terms of growing up with a certain background without any of the advantages to start off that most people think you have to be successful and to achieve the success that you have and discuss many of the ideas that you do. So I'd love for you to discuss your story, the origination of your background as the son of a coal miner, and the lessons your parents taught you about achievement and success, and what led you to have, from a young age, this passion for learning and success when most of the people around you probably did not. So I'd love you to share that.
Yeah, Dan, I'd be glad to. I really enjoyed this thinking back. I said, I don't mean it for it to be about me. I was born in 1941, the son of a coal miner who was born in 1917. Married my mom, who was like 2 months being 14 years old. She was not pregnant. Often young girls got married early looking for a better life. Mom was from a family of 16 children, all being single births, and all lived to reach maturity, with several of them lived up into their 90s, including my mom. Both of my parents had a 7th grade education, and once when I asked when, she said the teacher had only had a 7th grade education. My oldest brother was born when Mom was 16, and before she was 22, she had given birth to 4 sons. A daughter was born at the age of 27. My parents lived through the Great Depression, and my dad was never unemployed or sought federal assistance, even one period for months after a life-threatening accident as an underground miner in a rock fall. His back was broke, and he could not walk without crutches. Underground miners made about $6 a day. Workman's comp was $15 a week. So instead of drawing compensation, Dad took a job driving a coal truck at $5 per day until his wounds healed so the company doctor would release him to work. I recall as a youngster seeing my mom following Dad to the truck with him on crutches, which then see him climb up into the truck. Mom would hand him the crutches and his lunch that she'd packed for him. It never dawned on me what he did for a bathroom during the day, but thinking back on the instant, I cannot help but wonder. That was simply a lot of pride in being self-reliant, providing for a wife and 5 children. And talk about my parents, things they taught me about work. My mom said thousands of times, hard work never kill nobody. She is full of sayings like, you can't spend money you not got. And don't let a little money burn a hole in your pocket. It takes money to ride a train, and plenty of other things to try to keep us on track. She'd say, we cannot waste your money. Your daddy crawls around in that old hole, and you never know when he might get hurt or even get killed. I started recalling things like, if you tell people what you're going to do, just be sure you do as you told them. If you get a whipping in school, you'll get another when you get home, because I know the teacher was right. I love to read books, especially biographies. And when I got to the 8th grade, it was high school, 8th through the 12th grade. We had an old-maid librarian by the name of Miss Barr, who seemed to protect the books with her own life. She would not let you check out more than 1 book at a time. 1 book might have been enough, except on weekends or school closings because of weather, but I solved their problems. Honestly, I can remember it just like it was yesterday. It was about 65 years ago. There were twins that worked in the library at different times of the day. I swear I was in love with them. They were mature and older than me, and I could not tell them apart. They were both beautiful, and I'm afraid it was a one-sided love affair. Anyway, I would get 1 book, I'd put it in my locker, go back later in the day between classes, and check out another book when the other was working. It was just a beautiful deal. I can still recall my mom saying, I swear you're going to go blind from reading so much. I would take off the book and lay it down for maybe a minute or 2, and I'd pick it back up again. I just couldn't stay away from the books. It's not hard to understand why I support reading and have given away thousands of books, and I still do today. I recall one day while visiting my mom, who was probably at least in her 80s or early 90s, when she said, Don, someone is always telling me about the books you give to the kids. I said, you guess they read them? I told Mom, I hope so, because this kid read them, and it's made a world of difference in my life. Yes, if one reads them, it was inspired, it was worthwhile. When I was about 21, I took a job with a consumer finance agency at the minimum wage of $1.15 per hour, and I was one happy young man. I had my own business card that read assistant manager, but in reality, I was an outside collection, meaning on a daily basis, I went into the office and was handed a route, they called it, which contained 20 or more collection cards showing people's name, address, place of employment, payment schedule, collateral, if any, and the amount past due, and the name of the signer or of the loan. I was already into books and tapes, which were audio cassettes at the time. As I was in my old car all day, except for the many stops I was getting, I would read from these self-help leaders. Napoleon Hill, Zig Ziglar, Dr. Dennis Whaley, Ed Foreman, and others. As I was saying, I was making $1.15 an hour with halftime, which was over 40 hours because the company was exempt. It was on training. I got halftime, which meant I made less than 60 cents for a time and a half. And I still was happy because I never complained. They were furnishing us education material, which I knew I was going places. For the use of the car, I was paid 7.5 cents per mile. Phil, my wife, packed sandwiches, usually peanut butter and jelly or a bologna. That was a treat for me to be able to stop and get a Pepsi or something to drink. I took money, invested in other cassettes and books, and I quickly learned Napoleon Hill was born in Wise County, which was our home, and he was a favorite because it seemed all of the others had learned from him. Not only did I read his books and listen to his voice, but I tried to read the books as he read, especially the ones he quoted from, like Orson Swett Martin, Samuel Smiles, Albert Hubbard, John Dewey, Edna Silcox, William James, James Allen, and others, such as Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he used his theory of compensation in his material. And by the way, the book on John Dewey was written in 1910, and I still got the copy of it. He said he published How We Think. Orson Swett Martin, like Hill, kid read Samuel Smiles. Martin had 2 degrees, one in medicine and one in law from Harvard. And he wrote such books as Iron Will, Every Man a King, Pushing to the Front. In fact, he was the founder of Success Magazine, 1897. Samuel Smiles had wrote a book called Self-Help in 1859. And I believe that's the first self-help book out there. He wrote about people who maintained persistence, such as Isaac Watt that perfected the steam engine. He avoided poverty, but said that it was caused mostly by irresponsible people. He wrote about Wedgwood, China. A guy named Joseph Wedgwood, he spent years and years to perfect which is now famous China. His books simply kept talking about self-reliance and persistence. And I might interject this point was the difference in him and Hill. They both wrote about people overcome adversity, but Hill went out and actually interviewed them on a one-on-one basis, where it seems that people like Samuel Smiles, they simply got stories and put it in their own words, where they got it from the newspapers or whatever. But Hill went to see people, over 500 of them, and wrote from facing them. And I think it made a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, it became much more real world based as opposed to pie in the sky in that sense. So what you're talking about, it sounds to me like really it was this love of learning, this love of books that you developed early on that brought you, you became aware of all these great thinkers, and Napoleon Hill being one of the main ones. And that's how you were first exposed to him, to that philosophy. And from there, would you say your interest in Napoleon Hill and success material, is that something that kind of followed you through your whole career?
Yeah, definitely. I guess it was maybe a little bit as a dreamer and seeing it because even at a real early age, I was telling people I was going to be a banker. I remember having a conversation with a cousin, said, you have to know somebody. I had my heart set on it in the consumer finance business. I think I got the absolutely best training in the world because I learned first to the people what not to do, which was very important because there's several uses of money. And of course, food, clothing, and shelter, also to lead a good life and what have you. And a lot of people just simply, it's not that they didn't make money, it's they simply never learned to take care of it. And of course, some of them are misfortunate. They get hurt in the minds like my dad did and what have you. But all in all, most of them just simply didn't plan on failing. They just failed to plan. And it's just pretty well that simple because you can take our circumstances. You know, my dad builds a nice brick home and pays for it and never had a debt problem. $4,000 the most money he ever borrowed in his life, and that was to build a house. And he did not believe in going out and buying stuff on credit. It took care of their money. But yet, at the same time, we're supported the church and other things. And I think learned a lot from them, but I learned a tremendous lot from the books, the people he read.
So talk about the series of events in your professional career. What was the journey or series of events that led you to become the chairman of Napoleon Hill Foundation at age 60?
Well, my early jobs prepared me for a career in banking. It started out with a desire to make money because my father worked in underground coal mines, which is a very dangerous profession. Not only is it dangerous, but due to the roof collapses and dangerous machinery. But each miner often developed a disease called black lung, which came from breathing the coal dust. Back then, the life expectancy of a miner was about 20 years less than other professions. My parents provided food, clothing, and shelter, but they were thrifty and of necessity. So often, when as a child I'd ask for money, I was told, honey, we cannot waste our money. Your poor dad crawls around in the mines. Often I was told about asking my uncle, other people to work, or work and makes a little bit of money. Nothing can replace the thrill of knowing you earned your own money. It made it easy to practice thrift and do some soul searching before spending money that you'd earned. Teaching youngsters how to save money is a vital lesson, even if they do not need the money. But teaching them to appreciate money, it was a lesson that will likely last a lifetime and no doubt pay bountiful rewards.
So talk a little bit more, Don. I've heard about this snake pit that you operated. This is fascinating to me, this story. I remember reading about this in your book, Everything I Ever Learned, I Learned from Napoleon Hill. And then continue on from there, telling us how that led to you becoming the chairman of Napoleon Hill Foundation.
Dan, I knew there were places that they displayed snakes and sold it in the South at Silver Springs, Florida. I'd learned about it on a vacation one time I was able to take. Dad had a friend who was mostly Indian by the name of Bates. He caught snakes, and he took my dad, and I even went with him. I can't believe parents would let him. And then we learned to catch them ourselves. They're really not hard. They were rattlesnakes and copperheads, and we put them in a duffel bag. But they were a little building by the road that they'd used and sold apples and stuff out of the orchard. So we just turned snakes loose in that, made a pit, and it was probably 8 or 10 feet deep, had a concrete bottom. And we just poured the snakes out, and we made little signs up, see the reptiles, 25 cents, and children for 10. And then I learned some things. I had an older friend that drove a Royal Crown Cola soft drink truck distributing. They made signs, a great old big signs. It said Royal Crown Cola, but at the bottom of it had a white strip across the bottom that you could put your business's name. And we painted on it Indian Head Mountain Reptile Garden ahead, and we put them on each side of the road. And back in those days, we got no permits, no signs, no nothing. We just stuck the money in our pockets. But then Dad built me a little building built just out of rough lumber, probably 10 feet, but 16 or something like that. And so we got a pop machine, we call it, outside. And at first we started selling snacks, potato chips and crackers and stuff like that. We added some little souvenirs. And I went to a place about a 2-hour drive down close to Cumberland Gap, and they had a place you could buy souvenirs. And I can recall, like it was yesterday, that we would buy a case of ashtrays, and they were $0.25 apiece. And they were comical. They had comics on them. To make a souvenir out of them, all you had to do is we bought little stick-on signs you peel off, and it said Indian Mountain Reptile Garden, US 23. We put that on. In fact, I still got a couple of things, but you could take a quarter item and put a little souvenir on it, and it become $1. And so lots of days on the souvenirs would make more than $100. You're 15, 16 years old. That's a lot of money. And on good days, of course, this is a very short season. When we was out of school, it practically died after Labor Day because people are not traveling, And I learned lessons. I learned a lot more lessons than I did in school. For example, sometimes the people Daddy worked with would identify themselves, said, I work with your dad in the mines. But I noticed in the summertime, they'd come and stop, and they would be a car or 2 cars following them, and they'd have out-of-state tags. So, we live in a rural area. There's not a lot of entertainment. So it seems that anytime they had relatives that come in, they bring them to the snake pit. And, of course, I had a bear and monkeys and skunks and bobcats and exotic birds. And as I got some money, I didn't spend all of it, but I bought some things to add to it. And I noticed they would bring people, and they tell me, they said, I brought you my brother-in-law or whatever's coming from Ohio on vacation, said I brought him here. So I learned real quick. I would tell them, I said, hey, next time you bring somebody here, you just tell me you brought me some, and you can do me a favor and show them around. I won't charge you the quarter to get in. Well, they're old coal miners, and they were in heaven to be able to give them a little stage and so forth. But here's the good thing. Them people, they got to take something back to Ohio. It was nothing for them people to buy 20, 30, 40, 50 or more dollars worth of souvenirs. And so there was no waste in the souvenirs, and it was just by putting a little sticker on it to make a souvenir out of it. It was just amazing. But I think I learned to treat people.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?